Once upon a time, in a little city, there lived a beautiful lady named Nessa. Nessa lived with her parents. These couples lived every day, solving and attending to the problems and bad things their daughter had done to the people in the city. So many times, they went around apologizing to people on behalf of their daughter. Nessa was very rude and disrespectful. She felt her parents were rich, so she could do anything she wanted without being questioned. She wanted people to be at her command at all times. Nessa paraded herself as the goddess in the particular city. Nessa made life a living hell for people. Whether little or old, she did not care who was an elder. Nessa made people wash her car and her clothes when they wronged her. Nessa never opened her mouth to greet anyone, and when people walked past her without greetings, they received punishment. She slapped and beat people who trespassed her. She insulted men who proposed love to her. She called them all sorts of unpleasant names. One day, Nessa met a couple on the way to the market. The couple was from a bigger city. They came to the little city where Nessa stayed for business. Mr. and Mrs. Samuel came to meet a business partner. They were very rich people who had business branches and companies all over the world. Nessa walked past them without greetings. She intentionally went back and pushed Mrs. Samuel, and her basket of fruits poured. Mr. and Mrs. Samuel apologized to her. They admitted it was their fault, but Nessa, who knew her wicked plans, did not pay heed to any apology. She slapped Mrs. Samuel. They were surprised as to why a young lady could just perform such a senseless act, regarding they were even old enough to be her parents. The couple decided to ignore her. After she left, the people around told Mr. and Mrs. Samuel all about her. They were shocked to hear those horrible things about her. Meanwhile, Nessa made sure she followed them to where they stayed. The next day, she packed her dirty clothes to the house where Mr. and Mrs. Samuel stayed. She told them that no one crosses her and goes scot-free. Their punishment for not greeting her yesterday was to wash her dirty clothes. Mr. and Mrs. Samuel humbly washed all the clothes together and gave them to her. Nessa insulted them and left the house. After some days, the couple left the city with the bad memories of Nessa. They even told their son about their encounter with her, and he protested that no one should ever have her in his life as a wife. He said she was very dangerous. Years later, Nessa met a young man when she traveled outside her hometown to visit a friend who stayed in a faraway city. They introduced themselves to each other, and some weeks later, they started dating. Josh was the man Nessa ever dreamed of to get married to. He had money, and he was also very handsome. Nessa was so much in love with Josh and decided to spend the rest of her life with him. Some months later, Nessa asked Josh to send her home and introduce her to his parents. Josh, however, told her he promised his parents to surprise them with his bride only on his wedding day. He told her his parents trust him, and also he had such a deal with his parents when he was younger. He said they would not be expecting to see her unless on their wedding day. Nessa only spoke to his parents on the phone. During their marriage ceremony preparations, his family members performed the necessary traditional rites. As days passed, their wedding day came. Everything was going on smoothly until the bride walked and entered the venue. Mr. and Mrs. Samuel recognized her. They asked their son to call off the wedding immediately. They called their son outside and informed him of everything he needed to know about her, reminding him of their encounter with her. George called off the wedding immediately, without hesitation. The elders returned everything to the family members. Nessa was ashamed of how they rejected her on her big day. Her parents, however, were not surprised. They never pitied her. They suggested it served her right, so she could learn from her foolishness. All the people who gathered went home. The people in the city were very happy about what happened. They were excited that all the things she did had finally paid her off. George, after some time, got married to a beautiful lady called Lillian. They loved and cherished each other. Their home was blessed, and his parents were filled with joy. Nessa was being mocked by everyone in the city. She later left to an unknown destination to put the broken pieces of her life together and start over again. The lessons to be learned from the story is that we should treat people with respect and kindness, and also money and beauty is not everything. We should always work on our character because character matters.